Paris, a city famous for light, for monuments, for grand boulevards, cafés, museums, and centuries of history. But beneath the streets, there is another Paris, a Paris without sunlight, without traffic, without tourists, a labyrinth carved into limestone, stretching beneath neighborhoods where millions of people walk every day, often completely unaware of what lies beneath their feet. For centuries, this hidden world has been expanded, abandoned, reinforced, mapped, forgotten, and rediscovered. Some passages contain the bones of millions of Parisians. Others are empty, some contain strange inscriptions. Others contain remnants of war, and some have been transformed into places that were never meant to exist beneath the city at all. There are stories of secret meeting places, underground cinemas, art installations, and explorers who spend entire nights navigating tunnels that officially do not belong to them. But how did this enormous underground world begin? And perhaps more importantly, how much of Paris is actually sitting above it? Tonight, we're going beneath the streets of Paris, into the tunnels, into the history, and into the mystery of the Paris catacombs. To understand the catacombs, we first have to forget the bones, because the underground world beneath Paris did not begin as a cemetery. It began as a quarry. Millions of years ago, the region around Paris looked nothing like the city we know today. The area was repeatedly covered by ancient seas, sediment accumulated on the seabed. Over enormous spans of time, those deposits became limestone. This geological layer became known as Lutetian limestone, named after Lutetia, the Roman name associated with ancient Paris, and eventually, humans discovered that this stone could build a city. The Romans quarried stone here. Medieval workers expanded the excavations. Stone from beneath the region helped construct churches, fortifications, and major buildings. But there was a problem. The city kept growing, and the quarries were beneath it. What had once been open countryside gradually became urban Paris. Buildings appeared above abandoned tunnels. Roads crossed them. People lived their daily lives directly over spaces they could not see. And because quarrying was not always properly regulated, parts of the underground became dangerously unstable. Then came the warning. In the 18th century, the ground beneath Paris began giving way. One of the most dramatic incidents occurred in 1774. A section of Rue d'Enfer today associated with the area around Rue d'Enfer collapsed, swallowing roughly 300 meters of roadway. Imagine standing in a Paris street and suddenly realizing that the ground beneath you is not solid ground at all. It is a roof, and beneath that roof is an enormous empty chamber. The danger became impossible to ignore. In 1777, Louis XVI established the Inspection Générale des Quarries, the General Quarry Inspection, tasked with inspecting and consolidating the abandoned quarries beneath Paris. Workers descended underground. They surveyed galleries, they reinforced ceilings. They constructed pillars, they created maps, and slowly, Paris began building a system to protect the city from the world beneath it. But another crisis was about to send something else underground. The dead. By the late 18th century, Paris had another problem. Its cemeteries were overflowing. The most notorious was the Cimetière des Innocents. For centuries, bodies had been buried there. Eventually, the cemetery could no longer safely contain them. Walls bulged. Burials were overcrowded. Public health became a serious concern. So authorities made an extraordinary decision. The dead would be moved underground. The old quarries beneath the two Missoir area were selected as a repository. Beginning in 1785, human remains began being transferred there, often during the night. Imagine the streets of Paris after dark. A wagon moves quietly through the city. Inside, bones, not one body, not 10, but the remains of generations of Parisians. They were carried into the darkness and lowered into the former quarries. On April 7, 1786, the site was consecrated as the Paris Municipal Ossuary. And from that moment, the world began calling it something else, the catacombs. But the bones were not originally arranged in the dramatic formations tourists see today. They were initially deposited much more simply. It was later that the underground space was transformed. Inspector Louis-Étienne Haricart de Thury reorganized the ossuary into something closer to an underground monument. Bones were arranged into walls. Femurs and tibias formed patterns. Skulls were placed among them. Architectural features were added. The result was neither simply a cemetery, nor simply a quarry. It became something stranger. A museum of mortality, and at the entrance to the ossuary, a warning, a rate, said ici à l'Empire de la Mort. Stop. Here is the Empire of Death. In 1809, the catacombs opened to visitors by appointment. People descended beneath Paris, to stare into the remains of Paris itself. Kings visited, foreign dignitaries visited. Napoleon III eventually descended into the tunnels, and over time, the catacombs became one of Paris's strangest attractions. But there was something visitors weren't seeing. Because the famous ossuary was only a fraction of the underground world. This is where the story becomes truly fascinating. When people hear the words, Paris catacombs, they usually imagine endless corridors lined with skulls. But that's misleading. The official visitor route is approximately 1.5 kilometers long. The ossuary occupies about 11,000 square meters. And it sits within a much larger network of former quarries. Beyond the public route, the character of the underground changes. The walls aren't necessarily decorated with bones. There may be no signs, no museum exhibits, no carefully maintained pathway. Just limestone, darkness, and passages branching into other passages. The underground network is often referred to collectively as the mines of Paris. And this distinction matters. The catacombs are an ossuary. The mines are the much larger quarry system. The mystery begins in the space between those two worlds. Imagine trying to map a city without seeing the city. That was the job of the quarry inspectors. Underground, they recorded galleries, pillars, walls, wells, and geological structures. Some inscriptions carved into the limestone identify the work of the Inspection Générale des Quarries. These markings are more than graffiti. They are evidence of an enormous engineering operation. The authorities needed to know where tunnels existed, where they intersected, and where the city above was vulnerable. The underground was essentially becoming another map of Paris, except this map wasn't showing streets. It was showing voids, empty spaces beneath the city, spaces that could threaten everything above them. And that raises an eerie thought. Every street has a story. Every building has foundations, but beneath some of those foundations, there may be another landscape entirely. Then came the people who wanted to explore it. They became known as cataphiles. The word is generally used for people who explore the unauthorized sections of the Paris underground. For these explorers, the underground isn't simply a tourist attraction, it's a hidden environment. A place where the familiar rules of the surface seem to disappear. No traffic lights, no advertisements, no crowds, no skyline. Just tunnels, water, stone, darkness, and the strange knowledge that above you. Paris continues. People are eating dinner. Trains are moving. Cars are crossing intersections. Couples are walking home. And you are underneath all of it. But there's a serious warning here. Unauthorized entry into the quarry network is prohibited and dangerous. The passages can be confusing, unstable, wet, narrow, and difficult to navigate. So this documentary explores the history and culture of the underground, not instructions for entering it. The strangest thing about the tunnels is that humans repeatedly found new uses for them. The underground provided stable temperatures, darkness, isolation, and enormous amounts of unused space. One unusual chapter involved mushroom cultivation. For generations, underground quarries were used for growing mushrooms. But the tunnels also acquired military significance. During the Second World War, parts of the underground were associated with both French resistance activity and German military installations. The same geological spaces that had once produced building stone, and later held the dead, could now become shelters, storage areas, or military positions. The underground had become a kind of parallel infrastructure. A city beneath the city. And then, in 2004, police discovered something that sounded almost fictional. An illegal underground cinema. Hidden beneath the city was a space equipped for screenings. A cinema, underground. It was reportedly accompanied by a bar and other facilities. The discovery became one of the most famous modern stories associated with the Paris underground. And suddenly the catacombs weren't just about history, they were about an alternative culture. A culture that saw the tunnels as a blank canvas. A place for art, for gatherings, for exploration. For creating spaces that could exist outside the official city. The surface had Paris. the underground had something else. This is where fact and legend begin to overlap. Stories circulate about underground rooms, secret chambers, painted walls, sculptures, meeting places, forgotten entrances, and passages whose original purpose has been lost. Some stories are documented, others have been exaggerated, and some are almost impossible to verify. That is part of the attraction, because the underground creates the perfect environment for mystery. A tunnel disappears around a corner, a doorway leads nowhere. A name is carved into stone, a passage is blocked. A map ends, and suddenly, your imagination fills in the rest. The catacombs have become a place where history and mythology occupy the same darkness. There is another danger beneath Paris: getting lost. The underground network is complicated enough that even experienced explorers have warned about its disorienting nature. Down there, a street name above you doesn't necessarily help. There are no windows, no horizon, no natural sense of direction. One tunnel can look almost identical to another. And when the light from your flashlight disappears behind you, the city above may as well be another planet. That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the underground, not the skulls, not the legends, but the realization that humans created a maze, and then built a city on top of it. The official catacombs today preserve the remains of several million Parisians. The site lies roughly 20 meters beneath the surface. Visitors descend 131 steps, and eventually climb 112 steps back toward daylight. But the true mystery isn't simply how many people are buried beneath Paris, it's how many layers of history exist down there. Geological history, industrial history, architectural history, religious history, military history, and modern counterculture, all occupying the same underground landscape. A place that began as stone, became a quarry, became an ossuary, became a historical monument, and eventually became a symbol of the hidden side of Paris. In 2026, the official catacombs remain a protected historical site. After a major renovation, the public route reopened on April 8, 2026, with updated exhibition design and preservation systems. The modern visitor experience is carefully controlled, because beneath the polished route, there remains a fragile underground environment, a place shaped by millions of years of geology, hundreds of years of quarrying, and centuries of human activity. And beyond the official path, the larger underground world remains largely invisible to ordinary visitors. So, what is the greatest secret beneath Paris? It isn't a hidden treasure, it isn't a lost royal tomb, and it isn't some mythical underground kingdom. The real secret is far more extraordinary. Paris itself has a second geography, a geography made not of streets, but of tunnels, not of buildings, but of chambers, not of parks, but of abandoned quarries, and not only of the living, but of the dead. Every day, millions of people cross the streets of Paris. They photograph the Eiffel Tower, they walk along the Seine, they ride the metro, they sit in cafés, and beneath some of them, the darkness remains, silent, cold, ancient, waiting, because the Paris you see is only the Paris built above ground. The other one has been there all along. And perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: you don't have to travel to another country to enter a lost world. Sometimes, you only have to look beneath your feet. This is Paris. And this is the city beneath the city.